24 hours after that, they were here. For Myron, a man who had slept with a total of 4 women in his entire life, who had never really experienced one-night stands, even in the days when they were fashionable, or ostensibly disease-free, who had never had sex purely for the physical sensation and without the anchors of love or commitment, the decision to flee felt surprisingly right. He had told no one where he was going or for how long, mostly because he didn't have a clue himself. He'd called Mom and Dad and told them not to worry, a move tantamount to telling them to grow gills and breathe underwater. He'd sent Esperanza a fax and gave her power of attorney over MB Sports Reps, the sports agency they now partnered. He had not even called Wynne. Therese was watching him. "You know who it is?" Myron said nothing. His heartbeat sped up. The yacht came closer. A cabin door in the front opened, and, as Myron feared, Wynne stepped out on deck. Panic squeezed the air out of him. Wynne was not one for casual drop-bys. If he was here, it meant something was very wrong. Myron stood. He was still too far to yell, so he settled for a wave. Wynne gave a small nod. "Wait a second," Therese said. "Isn't that the guy whose family owns Lockhorn Securities?" "Yes. I interviewed him once, when the market plunged. He has some long, pompous name." "Windsor Horn Lockwood III, Myron said. "Right, weird guy." She should only know. "Good-looking as hell," Therese continued, "in that old-money country club, born with a silver golf club in his hands kind of way." As though on cue, Wynne put a hand through the blonde locks and smiled. "You two have something in common," Myron said. "What's that?" "You both think he's good-looking as hell." Therese studied Myron's face. "You're going back?" There was a hint of apprehension in her voice. Myron nodded. "Wynne wouldn't have come otherwise." She took his hand. It was the first tender moment between them in the 3 weeks since the charity ball. That might sound strange. Lovers alone on an island, the sex constant, who had never shared a gentle kiss or a light stroke of soft words. But their relationship had been about forgetting and surviving. 2 desperate souls standing in the rubble, with no interest in trying to rebuild a damn thing. Therese had spent most days taking long walks by herself. He'd spent them sitting on the beach and exercising and sometimes reading. They met up for food, sleep, and sex. Other than that, they left each other alone to, if not heal, at least stave off the blood flow. He could see that she, too, had been shattered, that some recent tragedy had struck her deep and hard and to the bone. But he never asked her what had happened, and she never asked him either. An unspoken rule of their little folly. The yacht stopped and dropped anchor. Wynne stepped down onto a motorized dinghy. Myron waited. He shifted his feet, bracing himself. When the dinghy was close enough to the shore, Wynne snapped off the motor. "My parents?" Myron called out. Wynne shook his head. "They're fine." "Esperanza?" Slight hesitation. "She needs your help." Wynne stepped gingerly into the water, almost as though he expected it to hold his weight. He was dressed in a white button-down Oxford and Lily Pulitzer shorts, with colors loud enough to repel sharks. The yacht yuppie. His build was on the slight side, but his forearms looked like steel snakes, coiling beneath the skin. Therese stood as Wynne approached. Wynne admired the view without ogling. He was one of the few men Myron knew who could get away with that. Breeding. He took Therese's hand and smiled. They exchanged pleasantries. Fake smiles and pointless bandies followed. Myron stood frozen, not listening. Therese excused herself and headed to the house. Wynne carefully watched her saunter away. Then he said, "Quality derriere." "Would you be referring to me?" Myron asked. Wynne kept his eyes keenly focused on the, target. "On television, she's always sitting behind that anchor desk," he noted. "One would never guess that she had such a high-quality derriere." He shook his head. "It's a shame, really." "Right," Myron said. "Maybe she should stand a couple of times during each broadcast. Twirl around a few times, bend over, something like that." "There you go." Wynne risked a quick glance at Myron. "Take any action snapshots? Perhaps a videotape?" "No, that would be you," Myron said. "Or maybe an extra perverse rock star." "Shame." "Yeah, shame, I got that." Quality derriere. So, what's wrong with Esperanza? Therese finally disappeared through the front door. Wynne sighed softly and turned toward Myron. The yacht will take half an hour to refuel. We'll leave then. Mind if I sit? What happened, Wynne? He did not answer, choosing instead to sit on a chaise longue and ease back. He put his hands behind his head and crossed his ankles. I'll say this for you. When you decide to wig out, you do it in style. I didn't wig out. I just needed a break. Mm-hmm. Wynne looked off, and a realization smacked Myron in the head. He had hurt Wynne's feelings. Strange, but probably true. Wynne might be a blue-blooded, aristocratic sociopath, but hey, he was still human, sort of. The two men had been inseparable since college, yet Myron had run off without even calling. In many ways, Wynne had no one else. I meant to call you, Myron said weakly. Wynne kept still. But I knew if there was a problem, you'd be able to find me. That was true. Wynne could find a Hoffa needle in a Judge Crater haystack. Wynne waved a hand. Whatever. So what's wrong with Esperanza? Clue Haid. Myron's first client, a right-handed relief pitcher in the twilight of his career. What about him? He's dead, Wynne said. Myron felt his legs buckle a bit. He let himself land on the chaise. Shot 3 times in his own abode. Myron lowered his head. I thought he'd straightened himself out. Wynne said nothing. So what does Esperanza have to do with this? Wynne looked at his watch. Right about now, he said, she is in all likelihood being arrested for his murder. What? Wynne said nothing again. He hated to repeat himself. They think Esperanza killed him? Good to see your vacation hasn't dulled your sharp powers of deduction. Wynne tilted his face toward the sun. What sort of evidence do they have? The murder weapon, for one, bloodstains, fibers. Do you have any sunblock? But how... Myron studied his friend's face. As usual, it gave away nothing. Did she do it? I have no idea. Did you ask her? Esperanza does not wish to speak with me. What? She does not wish to speak with you, either. I don't understand, Myron said. Esperanza wouldn't kill anyone. You're quite sure about that, are you? Myron swallowed. He had thought that his recent experience would help him understand Wynne better. Wynne had killed, too, often, in fact. Now that Myron had done likewise, he thought that there would be a fresh bond, but there wasn't. Just the opposite, in fact. Their shared experience was opening a whole new chasm. Wynne checked his watch. Why don't you go get packed? There's nothing I need to bring. Wynne motioned to the house. Therese stood there, watching them silently. Then say goodbye to La Derriere, and let's be on our way. Chapter 2. Therese had put on a robe. She leaned against the doorway and waited. Myron was not sure what to say. He settled for, Thank you. She nodded. Do you want to come along? He asked. No. You can't stay here forever. Why not? Myron thought for a moment. You know anything about boxing? Therese sniffed the air. Do I detect the distinct odor of an upcoming sports metaphor? I'm afraid so, he said. Ugh, go on. This whole thing is sort of like a boxing match, Myron began. We've been ducking and diving and weaving and trying to keep away from our opponent. But we can only do that for so long. Eventually we have to throw a punch. She made a face. Christ, that was lame. Spur of the moment. And inaccurate, she added. Try this. We've tasted our opponent's power. It dropped us to the canvas. Somehow we managed to get back to our feet. But our legs are still rubbery and our eyes are still hazed over. Another big blow and the fight will be over. Better to keep dancing. Better to avoid getting hit and hope to go the distance. Hard to argue. They fell into silence. Myron said, If you come up to New York, give me a call and... Right. Silence. We know that wouldn't happen, Therese said. We'd meet up for drinks, maybe hop back in the sack, but it won't be the same. We'll both be uncomfortable as all hell. We'll pretend that we'll get together again, and we won't even exchange Christmas cards. We're not lovers, Myron. We're not even friends. I don't know.